And we are live. Hi, Rizal. It's very nice to finally meet you. Rizal and I are coworkers at GitHub, and it's just a pleasure to finally meet you. I'm one of Rizal's sponsors on GitHub, and so if anyone wants to sponsor her incredible outreach work and developer advocate work at GitHub or on Hashnode, and is it Black Girl Bites on Hashnode? It is, right? I read
Yeah,
that as well.
microbytes.dev.
Yeah, my hash node, Rizal, is infraswarm.io. I love the hash node. I think the feature that I like most about it is how it saves as Markdown, our blogs as Markdown, and it saves it to GitHub. I love that feature.
Yeah, me too. There's like Hashnode's a really nifty blogging platform and has a great community on it. I'll
And
follow
you,
you. Infrastorm, you said?
infraswarm.io. Yeah, please. Yeah, thank you. Are you a pro member? I'm not a pro member yet. I was interested in it. There's some AI stuff that looks kind of weird and I mean, excuse me, interesting. But
Yeah, I saw some like features that they had where you can like ask questions, I think about different um platforms or frameworks like Astro within Hashnode. I haven't signed up for the pro membership yet. I'm still waiting to see if like it's worth it for me. But it did look cool.
and what is Astro? I didn't catch that.
Oh, Astro is like it's a meta framework for React or for JavaScript. So they had like Hashnode had a couple of like AI tools where you can maybe say like, oh, I have a question about Next.js or Astro or different frameworks. So that's the AI thing that I saw. I'm not sure about which AI feature you saw.
Yeah, I don't think I kind of connected with exactly what like, you know, my impression was it's like, oh, it's AI, whatever that means. Um, but yeah, I think you're probably right. There probably is probably more to the story. I'm going to look into it. I'm going to take a note to actually write that down and look into it. I think from a just kind of a high level, I like to support as many. I mentioned that I'm a supporter of yours. I like to support as much software development and software stuff as possible. I'm a software person. I feel it's my obligation. And when I first started my career 25 years ago, believe it or not, I was instructed that you had to buy like a book a week, and so I consider kind of my software. I'll describe it as a habit, Rizal. Kind of like that. I try to support all these indie developers and for profit, and development companies or companies that are developing software.
Yeah.
I think it's important, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Then thank you for continuing to support the developer community like financially. That is important, especially like in within the open source space, because a lot of people are doing a lot of work that businesses are making money off of, and they're not making as much.
Yeah, it's a good, really good point. I my if you go to McGonagall, the github.com/McGonagall, my little quote about myself is that I've been making um, my living off of open source software since Linux kernel 2.6 something or other, and so it was 2.4. I'd have to look it up, but it's basically since 1999. So it's kind of like a trick. I'm asking people to kind of look up what kernel that was and when that was, but it was early 1999, and I mean I've made my living off of open source literally ever since. It's just so like intrinsic to who I am. Just open source. And so when did you get involved with the like, open source, or what was your first open source project?
Literally when I started working at GitHub, I think.
Oh, no
Um,
way.
yeah, I think the in my interview, they like some of the interview prompts were like, do a presentation on how you would improve GitHub or what would you do as a developer advocate. And I was like, I would make contributing to open source easier because at the time I thought it was confusing. But you remember B Dougie from GitHub? I think he moved on to his new company, but he was my manager at the time, and he was like, try contributing to my project called Open Sauce, and that was like my first contribution. And after that, I've been contributing ever since.
There was another project of you that I found on your site. I'm just going to bring it up. Hopefully, I can do it quickly. It'll make this story much more interesting. But I was really impressed by it. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to pull it up real quick. Oh darn it! I think I'm going to jettison this line of thought. But I did notice projects that you're supporting and contributing to, and I was impressed by them. It's a lot of JavaScript. Where did you learn your JavaScript chops?
Yeah, I went to Resilient Coders.
Oh, you're Brazilian coders. Oh, I love
Yeah,
Brazilian coders.
I
I
did.
started in Massachusetts, where I'm from. I know I was affiliated with it at one point.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm in Massachusetts right now. Yeah,
Oh,
I
I didn't
went
know
to.
that.
Yeah, I wonder what year you were you involved because I was in it in 2018.
2022. It was after. It was actually during COVID, so it was like 2021. Yeah.
Oh, dang, I missed
So
it.
I worked at an insurance company called
Home site insurance?
Homesite. Yeah, Homesite Insurance. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and so
Funny.
I was like a mentor to a couple of Brazilian coders, and then as part of that, I did the interview process, and I interviewed them, and then I attended some of the mock interviews. I was a mock interviewer, and then I got to meet and listen to the founder, and he's an incredible guy. He's getting out of it. He feels very disenfranchised by diversity, inclusion, and tech. Have you heard about this? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what he said.
yeah.
He's a phenomenal person. He's a really neat
He's a
guy.
great speaker.
Yeah, yeah,
Both him and Leon Noel, David Delmar and Leon Noel, they're amazing speakers, great motivators. Yeah, I think they moved. I think David Delmar moved on. He wrote a book, and then they have a new CEO for Brazilian Coders. I can't remember
yeah,
her name. It starts with an A, maybe. But that's awesome. Do you
yeah.
know Nicole Bazile by any?
Yeah, I was one of her mentors. Yeah, and so
Awesome.
I was teaching her like Unix, like the CLI. Yeah, she's a great
Awesome.
girl. Yeah,
I actually so like I guess more backstory. So I did Brazilian coders, then I like ended up working in a job and stuff like that. But I started or I helped to start another program called G Code. And Nicole was part of that. And it's just like it was like a very low level introduction to web development. It wasn't as like extensive as Brazilian coders, but it was a way for people to like or for women to get their feet wet in web development without feeling like nervous or pressured or whatever. And if they were like, "Oh yeah, I really like it," we would help them move into other programs like Brazilian Coders or
oh,
Code.
Rizal, that's so cool.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
wonderful.
yeah,
That's like it's really good work.
yeah.
So it was early in my career, after I got my master's degree, I taught at the Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology in the
Uh,
South End. Yeah, I taught network engineering. I taught which was really a wireless network engineering curriculum, and
yeah,
then I taught Linux system administration. And then based on the wireless work I did, I got to go to Africa when I worked at Booz Allen Hamilton and
that's
build wireless networks for HIV drug distribution. It was
what?
so cool. Yeah. So I
That's
was there for 6 months. I was in Tanzania and Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire was rough.
wow.
They were like a yellow country when I was there. It was pretty.
What
They
does
just had a
yellow
war.
country mean? Sorry, I don't
I'm
know.
sorry.
What do you mean by a yellow country? I'm not
Oh,
familiar.
so the State Department has various levels, and so red is like absolutely do not go, like whatever, like,
Oh,
and then yellow is like and then green is like, yeah, you can go. So
oh.
sorry, yeah, sorry, I didn't clarify that. Yeah. Um, and so yeah, so I mean, so when I was there, it was like there was literally a body in the office where I worked when someone was murdered, as part of the war, and then the warfare, and then the body wasn't there when I was there. I was there like a year later, but like it was rough. It was and then Tanzania was very wonderful, very beautiful, and I got to go on 4 safaris. I was traveled through all 19 of their airports by myself. And then I was in the bush, and I jump in a cab and go off into the safari, and I got surrounded by lions.
What?
At one point, yeah, yeah, it was pretty intense. It was
That's
really
so
cool.
crazy.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was the best work of my life. Building these wireless networks for because the HIV drug, the antiretroviral drugs are cold, right?
Yeah.
They're like COVID drugs. They need to be refrigerated, and so they need a supply chain that has telecom in order to do it. And so it was neat. Yeah,
That's
and then
awesome. That's a great experience for you and
it
for
was
the
cool.
like that's awesome.
And I trained. What I was doing, I was teaching the in-country personnel, and it was like a train the trainer type situation. So they distributed all that knowledge about Wi-Fi networking and long haul Wi-Fi networking throughout the continent. It was cool.
That's even better. That
Yeah.
way it's not like if you leave, the knowledge leaves with you. Like you've spread it across the country. That's
Do you have
awesome.
any networking experience? Have you ever fooled around networking?
Okay. So I initially studied IT
Mm-hmm.
before Brazilian coders. So I have help desk experience and I think I took like one networking class, but I'll be honest, I did not know what was going on. It was confusing for me. So I'm
I was describing it to my mother. Like my father was a civil engineer, and then like if he had to talk to like a mechanical engineer or like a nuclear engineer or like an electrician, like the engineering profession, like a software engineer, focused on application development, and a network engineer do not act or behave or know the same things. It's very interesting. I'm actually going to a network conference tomorrow in
Oh,
Dallas, and I'm
oh,
teaching a class on GitNops. And so, have you ever heard of GitOps?
yes, yeah,
Yeah,
like GitOps. But what's GitNops?
GitNops is like GitOps, but it has an N in it, which refers to the network. And so
Oh,
it's GitOps for your network. And so it's using GitHub and GitHub Actions to orchestrate your network. And so
that's
if you can,
cool.
I'm sure you're familiar with Arc, right? Um,
Yeah.
the the actions runner controller, right? So what you do is, so in a traditional like enterprise network, you have this network that everyone kind of connects to, and then there's this out of band network that is called the management LAN. And this
Yeah.
out of band network is how you configure and manage these switches or these routers or these firewalls or these load balancers or whatever the network is comprised of. And so my idea is to put an ARC, an actions runner controller, inside the management LAN, and then use GitHub and GitOps type approach to management to manage your network. And so, you can spin up in Arc, for example, in a Kubernetes cluster, you can spin up like 1,000 different containers to communicate with all the different network devices, and then just make it happen. Because
Oh,
one of the differences between network engineering and software engineering is like a software engineer makes a mistake, they can get it fixed in the next release, and the network engineer, they get fired, right? It's different.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm. It's intense. I was a network engineer from the beginning of my career, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was,
Yeah.
and then like it's important work. I think you can, the whole, GitHub wouldn't run without the network.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
underrated work.
it is underrated work. That's a good point. Like there's a lot of like late nights, right? Because you're doing stuff in the data center, you're cabling things, and like frankly, I think that was part of the reason why it's such a male dominated profession. It
Yeah.
doesn't, like, a mother couldn't do it, for example.
Yeah.
A young mother
It
couldn't do
doesn't
it.
give bandwidth or time for
Uh,
yeah.
it's interesting, right? And so, I did notice, I was able to find that project that I think forked from you, and it was the virtual coffee project. Would you mind
Oh,
mentioning that? Yeah, it's cool, right?
yeah, I love virtual coffee. The maintainer of it is Becca. I hope I say her last name right. It's like, well, I'm just gonna say Becca HW because that's what she writes everywhere. Um,
Okay.
but basically, it's like a community for developers of all levels. And what I was doing was I was introducing people to or helping people make their first contribution on live streams. So I would like bring somebody on, kind of like you brought me on, and then I would like walk them through making a contribution. And I found like some more maybe more like less complex projects, things for good first issues, and like virtual coffee was one of them. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I quite understand it. So when I think of a virtual coffee, I think I proposed to you when I first met you. Hey,
Yeah.
let's grab a coffee. Like I think of it like a Zoom. You sit there and drink like a beverage. And you get to know each other. But is it different from that, or you mentioned bringing people on? What does that refer to?
They sorry, to be more specific, they meet periodically on a Zoom. And it's like it's whoever's part of the program or part of the community, they meet periodically and they talk about like different things. Like I think if you go on the website, they have like topics that they're gonna talk about, like thoughtful learning or finding value in challenging ourselves. I'm like reading stuff off the website
Oh
right.
yeah, no, I'm gonna take a peek. Is it virtualcoffee.io? Is that what it is?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. And then they have a newsletter as well. So what I was doing was helping people to contribute to the actual landing page. But yeah, it's an awesome community for people. And then I would also tell them like, hey, join the community because I think it'll be like helpful for your career growth.
Wow, it's lovely. So when the site, I think it was a while ago that I forked it, but I
Yeah.
think I thought it was like a virtual coffee platform. But is the virtual
Oh,
coffee code on your site, on your GitHub, your GitHub, is that like the website for virtual coffee, or what is
yeah,
that?
it's a
Okay.
it's a simple site. It's not complex. That's why I was using it for a good first issues. That would be cool though if it was like a
A
platform
platform to
like
like
oh
connect people. Like if like in Slack, they have the donut thing, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
They should
So
make that. Maybe I'll tell Becca. It
yeah. Please
wasn't
connect her
complicated.
to me, and I could use it for the GitNops community I'm trying to develop. So, I know you're a community. Like the old fashioned expression is like evangelist, right?
Yeah.
And you're an advocate. Is that what like you're
Yeah.
an advocate? Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's an even cooler title. And so would you mind discussing what it means to be a community advocate?
Yeah. As a developer advocate, I'm like the at least this is the way I look at it. I'm the bridge between the company and the developer community, or whatever technologists that leverage GitHub. So on the community side, I'm helping them to better, or even on the business side, I'm helping developers to better understand how to leverage the GitHub platform when they come out with new features, whether it's Copilot or Code Spaces. I'm creating content to help them understand how to optimally use it. But then on the other side, I'm also listening in from the community of like what things do they have issues with, things that they're not happy about, and I'm bringing them back to GitHub, especially product managers, which I work closely with. Maybe I'll meet with them once a week for different products, and then I'll be like, oh cool, you're coming out with this, I heard this from the community, and then also I'll create content based on the new features that you have coming out.
Wow, what a neat job. I've done a little bit of evangelism work myself, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm currently working in sales, and I found the difference. One of the differences between the evangelism aspect is like you can get very practiced at a particular like discussion or speech, because you give it quite a bit. And like when I remember this clearly, like I had this one speech or this one talk,
Yeah.
and like my pauses were all the same, my jokes were all the same. Like it was a performance. It was more like acting than it was, um, like extemporaneously like spouting out, some discussion or fielding questions at the same time. Like I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really neat experience. And then, I think I kind of approached it like a teacher. And so it was like this one. There is an advantage if you have like the same class you teach, you can standardize and you can really kind of learn from each experience and get really good at delivering that material too. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was actions, and so I found it was basically the reason I came to GitHub. It was such a marvelous CI/CD system, and when I first started, it was described as a dream engine. Have you ever heard it described like that?
Oh, I
If
didn't.
you can dream it, you can make it happen, which I think is true. When I was selling it, or when I'm selling it, I describe it as really like a modern approach. So I'm not sure if I told you, but I have a background working at CloudBees, the Jenkins company, and then actually a continuous delivery company called Spinnaker. And so I'm very, very familiar with the problem domain. I've been really quite focused on it for 6 years.
Yeah.
But the containerized approach really is novel, and it creates a lot of opportunities. So, for example, in my GitNops, I've automated Postman, so Postman can configure and command and control network
Yeah.
devices, Terraform, Ansible, and then like node code. And so,
Oh,
yeah, so
cool.
I'm doing all this stuff with Cloudflare. If you're familiar with them, they
Yeah.
have a serverless platform, and so you can use any. So it's bring your own tool, right? Bring your own tool and really make anything happen. And one of the challenging things I found is like getting variables from the GitHub Action system into Terraform. That's actually pretty hard.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
How did you solve that?
So a lot of grit, right? So I found like an issue on the Terraform. So HashiCorp created like a node project to wrap Terraform. Terraform is actually a Go binary, right? So they
Yeah.
wrap it in like this node code, and then I found the solution in an issue, and so it took a lot of doing, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I can't help. I'd love to get your advice on it, but I can't help but think those experiences are going to limit the network engineers from digging in.
Sure.
It's gonna be too. It was really hard. It took a lot of work.
Yeah. That does seem inflexible for them.
Yeah, especially if you don't have experience in Terra. So I needed like experience in Shell, right? The Bash, Z Shell or Bash, I guess. Bash, Terraform, Actions, containers, right? Like how the Docker for Docker, like, and then it was happening inside of a Arc, right? The
Yeah.
Actions runner controller, and so I think basically it's like a educational opportunity or like a consulting opportunity. You
Yeah.
know, these network engineers want to go with this approach. You know, I'm describing it as modern network engineering, right? Um, I think they
How do you
need to like.
feel about,
Go ahead. I'm
sorry.
sorry.
I was gonna say, how do you feel about Pulumi? Have you tried out Pulumi as an alternative to?
Yeah, that's a great idea. And so, um, you know, the end like target is like a network device, but I think like Pulumi is primarily used for like clouds, right? But the clouds have a networking component, obviously, right? So if you're trying to configure and command and control the AWS network, right? You could use a Pulumi, you could use CloudFormation, you could use AWS's CDK, right? There's
Yeah.
a bunch of different opportunities for that, and um, so you know, Pulumi does not, as far as I know, have support for like F5's. F5 is a load balancer company. F5's API, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
Mhm.
So it's just a limitation of like my networking knowledge.
Yeah, you know, of course. Yeah, no, no, it's a great question.
Yeah.
But networking is a big component of clouds, right? And like wiring up the virtual private cloud and wiring up the network address translation and the NAT gateways and like all that stuff is like a lot of doing. Like I've had a lot of experience in that at like at Armory, the Spinnaker company I used to work
Yeah.
at, for example. You know, but
Wow.
like all this stuff is really really complex and like one of the things one of the things I'm configuring, commanding, and controlling with Ansible
Mhm.
is a BGP router. And so there's the Border Gateway Protocol router, which is like it's what the internet runs on.
Okay.
And it's not for the faint of heart. You know, you have to be like a specialist in BGP to even like start the process, right? Um, you know,
Dang.
it's interesting stuff. Like, you know, what I find most interesting is the collaborative aspects of GitHub, right? So network engineering has not had those opportunities before. You
Yeah.
know,
And that's
being
bring
able to use Git. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, from a software engineering perspective, that's what drew me to GitHub. I mean, GitHub Actions drew me to GitHub as well. Because at first I was like, okay, it's just like a place that you store your code in and share your code with people. But when they
Yeah, it's
came
so
out
much
with
bigger,
GitHub,
right?
huh?
It's so much bigger than that, right?
Yeah, yeah. Once I discovered GitHub Actions, I'm like, wow. Because from my software engineering experience, I worked at companies where like we were like manually releasing code, like we didn't really have any automation. So it was like prone to human error and it was just stressful. Like we had to do it when nobody's on the website and stuff like that. But I'm like, once I discovered GitHub Actions, I'm like, wow, this would have saved me so much time and effort.
You know, it's kind of subtle, but one of the main benefits of using like a GitHub or Git in general
Yeah.
with networking is you get a source of truth. Have you ever heard of that expression? It's
Yeah, yeah,
really
like a single
yeah,
source of truth. Yeah.
single source of truth. And so you get the source of truth for the networking configs. You know, because like if you have a delta, if you have two different configs and you don't know which one is which, and like you're smoked, you're
Yeah.
done. You know, and like I mentioned, and that's like a fireable offense in network engineering. You know, what do you mean you created the a BGP route with the wrong ASN or whatever, like whatever the example is, right? And like you'd
Wow.
just be smoked. You know,
Why is network why is network engineering so intense? Why can't you all
it's the core of the whole. Everything relies upon it at such a level. And what network engineers have had to do for a long, long time is build all this redundancy, right? So if one router fails, it fails over the second one. Like at the beginning of my career, I worked for the Federal Aviation Administration as a network engineer, and the network that I worked on had six nines of reliability, which is more than telecom or more than like financial industry. So it's 99. So it's like just a handful of seconds of outage time a year, right? And it required four of everything. So four, mainframes, four routers, four switches, four. It was four of everything. That was kind of the math to get to six nines, and that's a little bit of complexity, I mean, a lot of complexity, but it shows how darn important that infrastructure was. It was for, I'm sure you've heard of like T1s, or like, like these circuits, right? These circuits connecting you to the other side. So it's four of everything, four circuits, four routers, four switches, four mainframes, it's
Wow.
intense. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I get it because if the network's down, nothing's
Yeah, it's
working.
done.
There's the business, it's gone.
But I find that there's similarities. So I just to share, I played American football for 8 years. I played in college in Massachusetts, and I played left offensive tackle, which where you're basically people are aware of the book or the movie The Blind Side, and that position you block the left, right? You block the the strategy is to have like the toughest guy, trying to attack the quarterback from his blind side because all quarterbacks are basically right-handed, and so you can never make a mistake at left tackle. You can't ever, you can drop the ball as like a running back, but you can't ever, miss a block. And it reminds me of that. Network engineering reminds me of this intense pressure to always perform and perform well and perform, and what it really does is it creates a lot of, what's the right word? Like not security, like when you're very careful, very careful, and so methodological, very careful, very, always double checking. And I think that's kind of slowed the rate that network engineering has moved at, right? Like, it's very rare to find a network engineer that has Git skills, right? And so you make you kind of wonder why, but I think it's just that they're working on other things. Their back of their brain is constantly worried about X, Y, and Z and making sure it works.
They don't have time. It sounds like they have less time to be investing in learning new things or creating and innovating because they're like, I need to make sure this other stuff's working. Whereas with software engineering, we probably introduced a bug, but we're busy learning a new course.
I completely agree, Rizal. That's a great way to put it. And so I'm hoping to kind of, in addition to like my GitHub work and CI/CD, I've been involved in DevOps for a long time, since like 2007. And I originally got into like infrastructure as code with Puppet, and then like Ansible, for example. And I'm hoping to bring some of those characteristics or some of those traits, or however you put it, to the networking profession at this conference at ONUG, spring 2023. And so, wish me luck. It could fall flat, right? People will be like, this is silly. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to have my network, entirely configured in a second. So,
good luck. I saw the summary you had. It looked pretty good. Like it looked pretty thorough.
Yeah, I hope so. And so, as part of it, I'll bring up the website. So I'm just gonna bring it up, and then I'll share my screen. Because I think at its core, what I'm trying to share is just all these like best practices learned from GitHub, and that's really my approach. And so this is my link tree. And so this is my handle's McGonigal. My handle's McGonigal on GitHub too. And then the first link is the ONUG Spring 23 curriculum. And then I am covering fast system thinking, which I'm very proud of. I can explain that later. But in this workshop, I'm going to be covering configuration management with Git and GitHub, continuous integration of Terraform, HCL, and Postman JSON, automatic testing of Terraform code with a superlinter. Have you ever used a superlinter?
No. What makes it super?
This is the name of it. And so the superlinter is a GitHub Actions job, or am I using the right word? I think it's job. Yeah. And then Sneak actually has some Terraform security scanning, and there's actually a couple others that are out now. I've been kind of futzing around with those. And then infrastructure as code, which I mentioned before, and then continuous delivery. And I'm pushing these changes down to a Kubernetes-based, GitHub Actions runner controller, and continuous deployment, and maybe testing that, and then continuous monitoring. And these are the principles and practices of DevOps, configuration management down to continuous monitoring that I was trained in. Right. This is my training as a DevOps. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you not? You didn't see my screen? I'm so sorry.
I'm looking at it on my own tab.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. How frustrating. And so I'm just gonna switch over. Oh, darn it.
Good. I was reading along. I was like, okay.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So you went to that same place. Thank you. But yeah, so that's really kind of the plan for today. I mean, for Wednesday is introduce the principles and practice of DevOps, introduce speed, right, and introduce what I call like systems analysis, design, and systems thinking, and I've kind of wrapped this all up into a package, and I call it fast systems thinking. And so I'll bring
Wow.
that site up, um, and
How many is this like a workshop style?
yeah,
Or
it's a workshop. Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
yeah, because I was like, this is like a lot of information. So I'm imagining that it's a workshop. This is awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so this is my fast systems thinking. These are the Venn diagrams: systems analysis, design, DevOps, speed and agility, and
Oh,
network engineering. And then at the center is tactics and strategy.
yeah.
It's a playbook for people to apply it to zero trust. Have you heard about zero trust?
I've heard that name, but I'm not gonna lie, I don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'd be happy to tell you. So there's kind of it's a new approach to systems networking,
Mm,
and before I think you'd probably appreciate before kind of COVID, people would go into an office, and once they're in their office, they were basically trusted entities, right? And so now we're not doing that anymore. We're doing zero trust, where you would run a like a VPN almost. Like my favorite one is Cloudflare. Cloudflare has like this little warp client, and the client lives in your desktop, and then it encrypts and authenticates all of your traffic. And then if Rizal were suddenly to be in Germany, right, the Cloudflare would notice that you're probably not who you said you are. You were in Massachusetts and now you're in Germany, and so there's probably something going on. And so this zero trust can be configured at the application layer. It can be configured at the device layer, at the network layer. Like in my router, my home has a DNS set up to do zero
oh,
trust, right? And
gotcha.
then my scale. I have a weight scale.
Your
A
scale?
body, I have a body scale in my office, and then my watch. My watch. So all these, and then IoT, right? IoT is going to be this huge network market for zero trust. So zero trust is expected to be a 50-60 billion dollar market by 2026, right?
Wow.
And so it's the biggest market, Rizal, that I've ever encountered. And so I'm very excited about continuing to work in this space and like trying to like get somewhere and combine fast system thinking and automation and zero trust, because zero trust is really predicated on these policies, right? So if Rizal, the one that's in Massachusetts, the person that's in Massachusetts wants to go to Facebook, you'd have to create a policy to allow that. You'd have to create a policy to allow you to go to GitHub. You have to create a policy. Well, maybe you shouldn't go to like GitHub Actions, but you should be able to go to GitHub, right? And because we don't
Yeah.
want you running code because you just don't have that plan, right? So there's going to be a policy for that, and then there's going to be this enormous management kind of workflow to manage all these policies,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, it's going to be neat.
That's exciting. I didn't
Yeah,
I had no clue what it was, but that's
yeah, it's
very
big.
exciting.
It's going to be a big deal, and so
Yeah.
that's really the theme of my tutorial.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah.
getting ready for this like tsunami of configuration management, and so my idea is that you use GitHub to manage the configs and the Terraform, and then you have a fighting chance,
Yeah.
like are you familiar with the tool Ansible?
Yes, a little
Mhm.
bit.
A little
Yeah.
bit. So the name Ansible, people don't realize, comes from a science fiction story called Ender's Game. And
Oh,
Ender's Game, in Ender's Game, the Ansible technology was this faster than light, hyperspeed technology that Ender used to control all the starships in the galaxy, and he used them to destroy the buggers because he swarmed them in this pattern, and then they were able to attack, and he was able to get at them, right? And um, and that's the metaphor for like me, right? For like
yeah.
configuration management. Like so with a wave of the hands, you're able to like fight the zero trust fight. You're able to like, it's almost like a magician, like
Yeah.
like the Cloudflare technology has the name magic in front of it because magic, magic firewall, magic, transit, magic WAN, all this stuff. So I
Yeah.
just love that metaphor where you're like in Lord of the Rings fighting this orc, army, and with the wave of the hands, you're able to like, fight them off and deal with these um, IT problems. I love that metaphor.
That's a cool analogy. And what
Yeah, thank
I
you.
have a question to something you were saying earlier about like
Please.
network engineers not knowing Git. Like, do you think it will be needed for them, because couldn't they just use maybe like a GUI or something? Or are you just saying like in general they don't understand the workflow with Git at all?
No, so I think the answer to like all those questions is yes. And so I think they need like the configs that the GUI generates to be stored in Git. I think they need to understand how to use Git. And I think they need to understand Git flow.
Yeah.
Like do you talk to people about Git flow? Does it come up in your work?
It came up more when I was a software engineer than it does now at GitHub, to
Yeah,
be
I mean,
honest.
like it's critical to understand. And like in my work at GitHub, it came up quite a bit with like former SVN people. They were
Mm,
wondering how to do um, how what the branching strategy is, or but like with Git flow and like a reasonably medium sized project. I mean, it's pretty easy to understand. And I think part of the problem is that I know I found this when I first started is like you just do everything in master and then you wait for your friend to be done and you do everything in master and then like pull
and then
requests out.
merge
What is pull request?
conflicts.
Yeah, merge conflicts and then you just kind of like you edit them by hand and you fix them and stuff. But all that is a solved problem,
Yeah.
in config man and so there's I mean I feel really strongly about just how important getting Git and GitHub knowledge is going to be to
Yeah.
and so just to share, Rizal, like I do plan on being very gentle, in my tutorial, and being like, look, I know this is going to be hard, like I know this is going to be like new, but I want everyone to feel comfortable, and I'm here to support you. I'm here to support you after the fact. I'm starting a Telegram, group for us to support each other.
Oh,
Like,
that's great.
yeah. Have you used Telegram? Do you use Telegram?
Not really. I,
It's software and security. That's my interest, but
oh
it's
God.
basically like Slack, right? It's like a Slack
Yeah.
for but it's tied to your phone number. It's a very nice app. It's all open source and it's very
Oh, I
secure.
didn't know it was open source. That's
Yeah, yeah,
interesting. When I
yeah.
hear
I want to become a Telegram
what's
developer, or like I want to like tell people to impress them I'm a Telegram developer. I don't know if it would, but I think it would impress my 2-year-olds. My 2-year-olds would be impressed.
that?
I have two 2-year-olds, Giselle.
You have two wait, are they twins?
They're Irish twins, and
Oh,
so
that's
they're a
awesome.
year. They're less than a year apart. Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Wow.
Mm. But I just think
Sorry.
there's so much like fear, uncertainty, and doubt out in the marketplace. Especially around new concepts or like, oh, that like I've encountered people being like, oh, this is like this is a software engineering thing. This isn't a me engineering thing. I'm not gonna there's differences, but like hopefully my demos and hopefully my walkthrough and my tutorial will get people interested enough that they'll like keep digging into it. And unfortunately, I do see some of the esoteric things to be just a little bit too challenging, for the average person. It took a lot to get like the as I mentioned before, the Terraform variables worked out. It was too hard, you
Yeah.
know. Mhm.
No, it's awesome what you're doing. It's like you're kind of trying to help the network engineering community move from like back in the day to like you're like here's where we should be in the 21st
Well,
century.
I didn't mention this before, but I've been working on it since 2016
Oh
for 7 years.
wow.
Yeah, so I've been
Wow.
working on different iterations of this idea, and this is the most like cogent and complete version of the idea. And
Yeah.
like at the beginning, it was called agile networking. It was the application of agile best practices to network engineering. And I actually have I'm sure you're familiar with a Scrum, right? Like the
Yes.
Scrum agile
Yeah.
methodology. So I have my Scrim, right? And I mentioned I play football, and so I have Scrim, and Scrim is named after the line of scrimmage in American football. And so it's this methodology where you move the ball forward, a certain number of, instead of like stories having points, it's yardage, right? So you're working your way through, and it's focused on the network engineer. I'm still working it out, but I'm actually pitching it to the ONUG board tomorrow. So
Whoa.
yeah, so I'm trying to get some funding to get it like not funding. I'm trying to get it like
Right.
supported.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's exciting. Oh my
yeah,
god.
yeah.
Yeah, I've always wondered how do people get like terms coined and stuff like that. Like I guess
No, you just start, right? You just have an idea and you start. It's I think you can probably tell. I kind of live for this type of stuff. This is the
Yeah.
stuff I like doing. It's like I like being creative. One of my
Yeah.
favorite one of my favorite things about the IT work is
Yeah.
like fast system thinking is my idea. The Git Ops is my idea, and Scrim. They're all my babies. Including my two-year olds. But you know,
Those ones are your human
those are
babies.
my real babies. Yeah.
That's awesome. Very exciting.
Yeah. Well, it was just a tremendous pleasure. I think we're at time. It's
Yeah.
been a good 40 minutes or so, and it's just been such a pleasure to meet you. And um, you can look forward to my support. Going forward. I'm going to double check that. I had a weird kind of change with my GitHub, so I'll just double check that. But
Yeah.
you can count on my support. Going forward. You do great, 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 great work, and thank you so much for meeting with me and discussing GitOps and GitHub Actions, and it's just such a pleasure to meet you and know you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I learned a lot about networking and getting ops and fast systems thinking. And like good luck for when you
So,
do
yeah,
your
I'll shoot you a LinkedIn message. I'll let you know how it goes.
yeah, keep me updated. I think it's kind of cool that you're trying to like move the community
Move the
forward. Yeah.
move the ball forward. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, some yardage. Thank you
Get
so
some
much.
yardage. That's right. Thank you, Rizzo.
Yeah. Bye.
We're gonna go off the Streamcast now.
Yeah.